there, welcome back to the Sprinkle Factory. I'm Tony, and today I'm going to be showing you how to set up and use your candy topper for your sprinkle tray with Eddie. But before we get started, if you haven't done so already, I highly recommend you go ahead and first calibrate your sprinkle tray with Eddie using our calibration videos for the sprinkle tray. Having Eddie already calibrated to your sprinkle tray is going to make this process super quick. If you haven't already done so, you can calibrate your sprinkle tray at thesprinklefactory.com/thesprinkletray. Additionally, you're going to want to download these CandyTopper calibration files so you can follow along with this video. You can download them at thesprinklefactory.com/CandyTopper. Throughout this video, I'm going to show you how to fine-tune your Eddie's calibration to your sprinkle tray candy topper, test your first candy design with your sprinkle tray candy topper, and print your first set of candies, along with sharing some tips and tricks to ensure that you have the best experience printing candies with Eddie. With that said, let's go ahead and dive in. As you can see on my screen, I've already downloaded my CandyTopper calibration files. I'm going to go ahead and get started by opening up this CandyTopper calibration image. Let's go ahead and make it a little smaller here so you can see it. There we go. Now, since we're printing on a Mac, we don't have to bring this calibration image into any sort of software. We can print it right here as is in preview. So I'm going to go ahead and go up to File and select Print. And then our print preview box will come up here. And as always, we are going to set our page to 4.5 by 4.5, the same size as the sprinkle tray. And then turn off auto rotate. And I don't need to adjust the printer settings at all because this is just a test print. So I'm going to go ahead and hit print and send to Eddie. And then we're going to hop on over to Eddie where I have placed my sprinkle tray on, and I've hit load to print the image directly onto the tray. And let's go ahead and speed things up a bit here. Much better, Eddie. Now, you've probably already guessed at this point, but what we're hoping for is these circles that we've printed on the tray to line up with the circles on the candy topper. So I'm going to go ahead and place this over our calibration print. And as you can see, mine is almost perfect as it is. This is why I highly recommend to calibrate your Eddie to your sprinkle tray before doing your candy topper setup, because you should be pretty close already with alignment. However, if you find that you do need to make some offset adjustments to fine-tune your print to your candy topper, you can do so in the Eddie config, following the same process we used to calibrate your sprinkle tray by adjusting the offsets here in the alignment tab, using the pluses and minuses printed on the tray to help guide your adjustments. I do recommend rinsing off your tray in between test adjustment prints here, so that way you can get a nice clean image. And I also recommend taking note of your offsets if you do need to adjust them for your candy topper so you can go back and forth as needed in the future. Additionally, while we're in the Eddie config, this is a great time to go ahead and check our advanced settings. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the advanced tab here, and you will see that I have my center scanning off. We always want our cookie center scanning turned off when working with the sprinkle tray. We do not want Eddie to try to scan the center of the tray. We have calibrated to the tray instead. Additionally, if you haven't already done so, go ahead and turn on the second option here to scan a large area for multiple objects. This is a newer feature within the Eddie config, and it's to help in situations just like this where there may be multiple items on one tray that have different heights. Once you're happy with your candy topper alignment and your settings have been checked, we're going to go ahead and print one last alignment image, and that is going to be this candy topper star calibration, which is going to give us one last visual confirmation that we are happy with how our candy topper is lined up before we actually test print on some candies. Again, I'm going to just print this straight to Eddie using the 4.5 page and unselecting auto rotate. No need to adjust my settings here. And we're back to Eddie. So we're going to go ahead and place our sprinkle tray and hit load. And once again, Eddie's going to print our alignment image directly onto our tray. Once our alignment stars have been printed, I'm going to go ahead and lay the candy topper back on top of the sprinkle tray. And I'm just going to give it a visual look over and see if I'm happy with how my stars look in reference to the candy topper circles. If you're not happy at this point, you can always back up a step and adjust those offsets a little more. It's way easier and less frustrating to adjust it here without anything on the tray than wasting candies. Now that I'm happy with my alignment, it's time to go ahead and do our very first print with the candy topper using real candies. As you can see, I've loosely loaded up one tray with candies. I purposefully didn't worry about how lined up they were in the candy topper because now I can show you my tips and tricks on how I get them nice and tidy. I typically don't do this process while the tray is on Eddie. It's typically off to the side and then I bring it over. However, the camera's set up here, so this is how we're going to do it for today. Now, working with a candy tray can be a little bit tedious. So that's why we include this cute little stick with your candy toppers. So you can flip over or wiggle your candies into place. I'm actually reusing Hershey's that I've previously printed on, as you can see, but I wanted to demonstrate the flipping process because this is really important typically if you're printing with M&Ms and you want to flip over to the plain side, or you just need to wiggle one into its place a little better. This stick comes in super handy. Once your candies are all flipped to the right side, you're going to want to make sure they're nice and lined up to get the best results. My favorite way to do this is actually taking a second candy topper and laying it over top and then wiggling it until the sides are all lined up and they are nice and seated. Not only are they lined up well, but you can transport them much easier this way. As I said before, I typically do this off to the side, so I'll actually line them up and bring them over to my Eddie just like this, removing the candy topper just before printing. Then I'll place it back on after printing and take it back to my drying station. Now that we've calibrated and set up our candy topper, it's definitely time to print on some candies. So I went ahead and sent our star file to Eddie, and all we have to do is press load here and he's going to get to work. The one thing I didn't get a chance to talk about is making sure Eddie has a fresh calibration before you get started. When you get to this point, if Eddie has been sitting around, maybe you're following along with this video and he hasn't printed in a while, my recommendation is before printing your candies is to go ahead and power Eddie off, remove the tray off of the tongue cover, and then power Eddie back on. Let him get a fresh calibration with nothing but the sprinkle tray tongue cover right before you print. This will ensure that he has the correct height and you're not going to send candies flying across the room as the result of an improper calibration. And just like that, Eddie's already done printing our stars onto our candy, and I'm going to go ahead and place my second candy topper back over my printed candies if the image allows, and I'm going to wiggle them into place here. There we go. And this is how I transport them back to my drying tray. Again, this is optional, but it definitely helps me from dropping candies everywhere because these guys are wiggly. And that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you learned something new and I hope you're super excited to try out printing your candies with your sprinkle tray candy topper.